Stop messing around. You introduce yourself first.
Sure. I'm Paige Westlink. I work at the Sierra Club Virginia chapter with Tim on communications, and we're in Richmond. We're based in Richmond. I think that's perfect as an intro, so I'll hand it over to
Establish your
you.
legitimacy. There's a formula to this. Now you all know the formula.
And I'm incredible.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Before when you're public speaking, one of the first things you want to do is establish your legitimacy.
Yes.
So Paige, I'm just going to do it for her. She's come to the Virginia chapter in a few short years, and in that time, she's increased our engagement on social media by 5,000%.
What?
Using a lot of that's absolutely right. Yeah, I don't know why you're not staying up, because that's really impressive. We were pretty much dead in the water in terms of our social media, and our average age audience from viewers is still a good widespread of people, but it went from 55 plus, mostly male now, to
18 to 25, mostly female.
yeah.
So.
That's our most predominant.
Yeah.
Using the things that we're going to talk about here.
So you're going to tell us how?
I don't think so. I think we're just going to leave it at that.
If you, yeah. Well, she doesn't work for free for other people. I'm just going to say that. If she wants some consulting, then yeah, no free labor from Paige. And I have been talking this most, and I haven't introduced myself. I am Tim Sawinski. I lead communications at the Sierra Club Virginia chapter. Been there for 4 years, and I didn't have any knowledge whatsoever in environmentalism. I said that in my interview, and they still gave me the job. Can you believe that? And the reason I said that, this is comms. You want to make a negative into a positive if you possibly can. And I said, I'm really interested in environmental justice. I don't know much about, pretty skinny on like energy policy, that kind of thing, and things related to this. But I think that can be an asset, because I think our messaging can be simplified so that people like me, who are politically attuned but feel outside of it, can be tempted to come into this movement, and that's really important. And I'm happy to report I've done an okay job. If you Google my name, it's a lot of shit talk of Governor Youngkin and Dominion Energy. So more than any other probably organization at this point. So I also so what we're doing here today is a mixture of my experience as a communications professional, someone who is new but now I think pretty adept at environmentalism, but also I just got my master's degree and from Johns Hopkins University in political communication. Thank you. It was fine. I worked full time doing it. It was awful. I hated my life. My weekends were my own. But it is all worth it if even just one of you feel empowered by this workshop. So what we're doing is actually kind of a new curriculum altogether. You can't Google the things some of them you can. You can't look these up. In fact, when I told Paige to look up examples, that's the first thing she tried to do.
I was like, this doesn't exist.
Yeah. So this is it's in its beginning stages. You all are not our test subjects, but you are our guinea pigs. So and the whole idea of this is, what is the point of being right, which we know we are? What is the point of having all the science and the truth and data in the world if no one can understand what you're saying? And we can do a better job as a coalition, as a movement, as people who are progressive thinkers, to make sure that that the public knows that we have their best interests first, and the people who disagree with us don't. And that's really what it comes down to, is if we can get that in people's minds, it's not just about having them know more about one subject or have more knowledge around one data point. It is about building a paradigm in people's minds, knowing that they can look at information from our opponents, from polluters, and know that they should look at that with suspicion. And that's how they keep getting away with these things, When Governor Youngkin says, it's parents' rights, but he's actually just using it as a backdoor to bully kids. That has to be called out, and we have to make sure that when people see that, they know it's bullshit. I'm sorry I'm cursing so much, and I'm probably not going to stop. So I'm just going to do a baseline right now. If we're going to be passionate about this, and also cursing actually really rings well with young people, as Paige knows.
Yeah.
Hi, I'm young people.
Yes. Yes, I'm Tim, young people. And I'm doing dad jokes now. So yeah, cursing, yay or nay?
Yes.
Fuck
The
yes.
more the better.
I'll be F word. I'm a PG-13. So yeah. And she's a policy wonk in the current space who talks to our leaders all the time. And yeah, obviously I was in a lobby meeting. I mean, anyway.
I feel like it's going to continue.
Yeah.
We curse in lobby meetings. I curse Monty Mason all the damn time.
Well, great. So that makes you more relatable, I guess. So that is kind of the framework of what we're talking about. This is an interactive exercise that we're going to be doing, though. We're going to kind of establish the context, then walk through the worksheet we gave you all, but then you all are going to come together and create essentially a narrative that is foolproof, but a narrative that cannot use any facts or figures. No statistics is allowed, because what we're talking about at the end of the day is exactly. I know.
Yeah.
Yeah. Her head literally exploded. I don't know if anyone saw that. So, because at the end of the day, when it comes to messaging and behavior science, shows this that yes, evidence-supported arguments can reinforce something, but people need to know why they matter in the first place. And the way you do that, oh, no, please. Sorry, Gloria. Now Gloria's equipped with all this stuff. So you don't have to read all through it, but there's just pretty much examples to give you an idea of what we're talking about. This is about values and framing. And a lot of times people misinterpret what framing should be. They think that framing is how you understand my perspective. Now frame, as we call it in a rhetorical sense, providing a frame is how other people should interpret what you're talking about. So when we talk about Dominion Energy, we make sure that they know that Dominion Energy is more concerned with polluters with their profits at the expense of people because of how much ridiculous pollution, the largest polluter in Virginia, and don't care about your bottom line. They don't care about your health, they don't care about raising your electric bills, and they don't care about making sure that we have a livable future. And we know that right now because their 15-year plan just came out. They're going to double the amount of pollution that's harming our climate. Those are the stakes. That's what we're at right now. And they're so good at messaging these things because they make it seem like, no, this is for you. But here's one of these trigger words that we were going to talk about. Is it a surprise to anyone that corporations are just greedy? Is it a surprise to anyone
It's their job or something.
Yeah, exactly. Profits before people is a really good frame. You've probably heard about that. That's the mentality we should always establish through. So it's framing is one side of it, and the other side of it is justice. We cannot talk about these things without making sure we're highlighting the fairness or unfairness in these issues. And we also have to make sure that justice, especially the people who are most impacted by this, whether it's poor communities or black and brown or indigenous communities, that they're part of the conversation. Because climate change is an issue that's going to take all of us to fix, and that means we have to be all in for one another. And if everyone can't experience justice, then justice isn't real. And that's what has to lead those things. If you can establish that baseline, that's your motivations, then you can be a good, effective communicator. This is not necessarily about persuasion on a one-on-one basis, because honestly, this will help, but that's more about asking questions. This is how to make you all an expert spokesperson. You're talking to a crowd of people who are really cold, and one of them had ice cream, and then they came back in. I'm trying to make sure that you're that person. If you need to talk to the press, if you need to talk to, or you have a short elevator pitch just to get more people to recruit in a large-scale way, this is public narrative focused messaging, that we're talking about changing hearts and minds, or at least influencing them.
If you're on Instagram, any social media, this is how you're going to do it.
This is exactly, yeah.
No facts, no figures, only after you've established the values and connected with people in a real way.
Yeah.
Which is something that I've really realized since working with Tim, and something that he really hones in on, is the thing that when you leave someone, they're not necessarily, or when you leave a group, they're not necessarily going to remember what you said or the statistics that you said. What they're going to remember and walk away with is how you made them feel. And that's when they're going to come back, is how you made them feel. So that's super important, and something that Tim is really great at, and something that we really work on. So
I've established legitimacy, so no more compliments with me, please. Thank you. That means a lot. So we'll go through these things really quickly. And then, like I said, we want this to be interactive. We want you all to come together and come with this. And by the way, if you don't want to talk about climate change, if that's not your main issue, but you want to use these rhetorical tools for something else, we're game. These are transferable skills. The climate is kind of an intersection of a lot of other things, but if you have, hold on, is this good? Is this a candid? Hold on. One more time. So, looking towards the future, Paige. That's it. That's the recruitment picture for next year.
Delaware.
What was that?
That's exactly what that is.
that's exactly what that was.
What was it?
Crossing the
Delaware.
Delaware.
Oh, God.
That is 100%.
Well, that joke is going to give me the gray hairs. He's gonna like it more like it. Very good, sir. Humor's also good for messaging. All right, so I'm just getting more pictures, and I know I'm so nervous. I'm not a model, man. My hair's not good. Anyway, so it's fine. All right, so we're gonna go through these really quickly. Like I said, we're just establishing frames right now. The other stuff is we're talking about this. We're gonna go. We'll quickly go through them. Let's say you have to get somebody's attention. That's essentially what a defining frame is. A defining frame is an attention getter that has nothing to do with facts or figures, but really establishing the values. Right, so the example we have is elected officials supporting expansion of fossil fuel instead of embracing clean energy. When we're talking about these things, we want to give people an action, always. And so we'll send an email that says, you know, hey, click this button, send a message to your representative really quickly, it'll be great. But again, protecting people from pollution should be the floor of policy, not the ceiling. Now people automatically agree with you because that's a good value to start by, and they know that everything you're going to say after that is related. Value frame, this is essentially all of what we're talking about, we don't have to go through it, but that's essentially make people be ashamed for disagreeing with you. That's a great way to put it, and this actually works really well in campaign messaging, because if you give them if you make them disagree with you and they look bad, and they know they look bad, it makes it harder for them to justify their points. And that's one of the things we consider winning, is that when we're making Dominion Energy or Glenn Youngkin play defense, that's winning. That's winning on our side. Did you want to go to the next one?
Sure. The binary frame, my favorite one.
Yeah.
Yeah, the binary frame is explaining.
This is the chef's kiss, the frames you can come up with.
This is your favorite frame. Yeah. Explaining that the motivation or goal of an opponent is mutually exclusive with basic values is, Tim, I think you should do this one because it's your favorite.
Okay, fine. Look, let's take the concept from what I think is backwards. We start with the data and then we go to the values. But what we always want to do, like I said, so I'm doing the wrong thing right now. What we know is gas stoves are bad for children's health. 650,000 children have a hard time breathing because they live in a home with a gas stove. That is just a real statistic. That stuff leaks when it's off. It leaks carcinogens, it leaks things that are bad for your health, that are bad for your heart or for your respiratory system. I learned today in Sharon Seller's wonderful panel that like when you're breathing this stuff in, it's not just your respiratory system, it gets into your bloodstream. And these kids are generally in areas that are hard, that are in areas that are underserved, underprivileged, under-resourced already. So they're already starting from behind and we're giving them something even worse. So how we would do that? Who's going to disagree with children's health? Who's going to be that? Well, Donald Trump maybe, but the other, and as we can see with Glenn Youngkin, but he's pretending he's not. But so we would frame that up as, you know, you can either be supportive of lining the pockets of the natural gas industry or can support children's health. There really is no in between, not when it comes to this. That's a binary frame. That is establishing something that should not ever be disagreed with by contrasting what they're doing. So, which is a good contrast frame is next.
Perfect. The contrast frame is exposing the audience to claims of polluters in a way that illustrates the harms of their actions. So the example on here that we use all the time is basically using what they've tried to frame up as a good thing in the way that they're doing it. More pollution is the only way to keep the lights on is what we have in our example. And the truth is that clean energy is rapidly becoming the most affordable option. So basically using what they say and completely flipping it into a positive thing for us, in the sense of, so here we have, we know that clean energy is more affordable. They're saying the exact opposite. It's really easy to do that if you just stick to those values and make sure that it's something that people are going to be like, oh yeah, that makes sense. And it's a matter of fact too. So.
Yeah. It's a sticky point because you don't want to repeat your opponent's talking points. You want to essentially give people the pre-information they need to see it and be like, well, that's bullshit. And that's what we're talking about. So Dominion Energy polluters in general always rely on probably 4 different arguments. It's economic, it'll create jobs. It's affordability. This will somehow make our energy bills more affordable, although every time Dominion builds a new pollution plant, that gets passed on to us. It's necessary to keep the lights on, so energy stability. And if you really look at what we know now, because I said at the beginning, we know we're right. The truth is on our side. That what they can do, they're having tried to explore solar and battery. This is not something that's just not more reliable. It's more reliable. It's also more affordable. Solar is the cheapest form of energy now, and it doesn't make people sick. Why isn't that the first choice? Why don't we pursue that first? Instead, we want to build another polluting plant in an area that's already it already has major health disparities, all because they got away with it before and they want to do it again. That's it. And we have to be called out about it. That's what I like about this job is narrative curation. It's when they can't just go unanswered. And people generally agree with us.
And speaking of calling people out, Hero Frame is essentially making decision makers, framing it up in a way where they can be a hero, where they can make the right decision. This one is super easy to do. It's actually my favorite. And this one is easy because you can just be like, right now you can do the right thing, but you're choosing not to. Or this is happening right now, your decision maker has the opportunity to make this decision and make it all go away sort of situation. It's really easy to do, and I think in any scenario that you're in, it's possible. What example do we have on here?
Well, I would say you don't necessarily tell them to support a wonky policy thing. So we actually
No.
had this issue last week while we were on vacations that we had somebody sent out an action alert that said, tell the city council to support ordinance XYZ or whatever. It was essentially, it gives the community more input on decisions about our utilities because Richmond has a toxic gas leak problem. Methane is rampant and the city wants to just build more and more instead of doing something about the core issue. That action alert was sent out to 1,500 people and 19 took the action. Yeah. So we stepped away from vacation, rewrote it, and that's literally how we said it. Richmond has a toxic gas leak problem. And Blair wrote it. She wrote Richmond has a toxic gas leak problem, and it's not only is this unhealthy for us, but it's also costing us a lot of money because every single time they repair a pipeline or build a new pipeline or expand a new pipeline, which is on theirs, that again goes into our utility bills. And even if you don't have a gas stove, it still impacts the bottom line. And so 900 gas leaks were happening over the city that have been discovered so far, and there's like a volunteer group that literally goes out with a weird tube-looking thing, and they find gas leaks and tell I'm sure it's an instrument of some kind, but yeah. And so, again, we've changed it. Like Richmond City should be focused on saving us money and protecting people's health. Tell them to make sure that the community has input too. Nothing about supporting a bill, and that within 2 hours got over 120,
Yep.
which is in the 10% margin. That's really good.
And now we're at 200 plus.
Are we really?
Yep. Perfect.
Wow. I was making those numbers up.
Me too.
Now I'm establishing delegitimacy. We keep you all on your toes. All right, and then the back is really easy. This is just, we can walk through these really quickly. The call to action frame is essentially the same as the hero frame, but a good message is a story. The best stories have a villain and a hero, you know? In our work, there are so many villains, but all of us can be the hero. And that's how you want to make people feel. The strong emotions she was talking about. And then this is with respect to my wonkier colleagues, the trigger word section is really important. I didn't point to you, but you made it obvious. With respect to my who won't be named wonky colleagues who are very smart, climate change is not good messaging, unfortunately. Even the climate crisis, there have been studies after this. There's actually been one big study that said like the solutions about climate change, words like decarbonization, net zero, electrification, weatherization. People think they know what it is because in the American lexicon, I don't know is the least uttered phrase. I learned that in grad school. And I was like, that makes sense, because I'm always talking about my ass, so why wouldn't anybody else?
We actually proved this too recently on our Instagram story. So we put up a poll. Blair took part in.
I got the right answer.
You got the right
What did I
answer.
do? What you
You're not
want?
being graded. I want you to know this.
Scientific.
It's for fun. Hi.
Sorry, I gave it away. Can I sit here?
Oh
Yeah.
Sure.
You can
We have
take a nap if
handouts,
you want
too.
to. It's weird.
But yeah, we put it on our Instagram story. We did a little poll, and we basically said, we do this thing called WTF Wednesdays, What the Fuck Wednesdays, and we define words that are commonly used in the environmental field that are maybe more scientific, maybe more wonky, and then we define them in a way that all people can understand them, so that when we're having those conversations, maybe next time they hear that word, they can be like, oh, that's pollution. It's not. We say decarbonization. Oh, that's pollution. So WTF Wednesdays is for this purpose. And we did climate change one day. It was a little, for the scientists, they were like, this is wrong. But for our work, it was totally correct. And we learned that a lot of people did select, the term that they thought it was. In reality, we had put, that it's pollution driven by it's pollution that drives a massive change in our climate, and that was pretty much
Causes
it.
extreme weather
Yeah,
events,
weather events,
harms
yeah.
people's health, etc.
I forget what the one
And there's a
was.
difference between being true and technically true.
It was
Yeah.
that
Right.
one, global warming, and I can't remember the third.
Yeah, I don't know. Who knows? We always put a silly one on there.
Yeah, and well, so there's one poll that came out from, I think it was Stanford, that looked at all these issues and looked at things. When they put the poll out, it's like about 65% of people thought they knew what the word was, but when they did it dropped down to 15% for things like decarbonization. People didn't know what that meant. They gave wacky answers. Electrification, they thought that meant someone was getting electrocuted.
Oh my God.
Yeah.
I don't even.
Right. Well, and look, and here's the thing. We have, our opponents have massive resources to spend on marketing. There's people who think about this all the time. It's not our fault. We're doing this in a volunteer way. Most people who are activists don't have a lot of money and time to, or lucky enough to be able to go to grad school to hone their skills. I understand that, which is why it's so important that we make sure this knowledge is proliferated with everyone. So this is kind of a list of trigger words. We didn't do the don't say this thing because I didn't want to be condescending, but don't say electrification. So don't say weatherization. Does anyone know what weatherization is? Sharon, you can't raise your hand. Yeah, you know. Oh, yeah, of course you know. Hey, Meredith. Hi, Meredith's Facebook. But weatherization, actually in Europe they call it weatherproofing, which I think is closer, but it's just draft proofing your house. When we come to electrification, we oftentimes, it's like detoxifying your homes, detoxifying your vehicle, because that's related back again to pollution. People know toxic is bad, which is why it's listed on there. Pollution drives, actually a White House study actually said this to the Obama administration. Stop talking about climate change, just say pollution. Just say pollution, just say pollution, just say pollution. You do it with chemicals, scary ones that sound bad, but we want to say toxic chemicals, which is why toxic's on here. Justice, fairness, people, despite what our politics and our political system might suggest, people do care about decency and people do care about shame. And people have an innate understanding that things should be better for certain people who have the hardest circumstances life can throw at them. So using like justice and fairness instead of equity is actually much better to do it. I'm not shaming you.
I
Okay.
just had a point, I want to just double check this, because when I was preparing for the earlier presentation, many of you were there, you know, I was on the Virginia Conservation Network website, and I was looking at the RGGI website in particular, and there were these terms associated with equity, and I was getting lost. I thought,
There you go.
people are not gonna get this, they are not gonna get it.
Yeah.
So I
Call
think we
anyone out.
really have to
And
think hard about, because then it becomes jargon, meaningless jargon.
right. Well, that's my.
Yeah.
And that's again. I'll say what I said at the beginning. It's. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
I was just gonna say, and then the other side uses it against us,
Right.
right? Like, you know, oh, they want equity. Well,
Yeah.
sure, yeah, but like, do we want justice and fairness? Yes.
That's a binary frame.
With a cape,
Yeah,
absolutely.
and a hat, yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
You all missed the previous conversation about capes and hats, so, yeah.
Oh, please. We'll stop what we're doing.
No,
Please
we
say.
should actually, yeah.
I just think that the argument could be made better if we were wearing a cape and we could use it for flourish.
Oh, that's
Yeah.
wonderful. I love that. I actually really like that visual. Which is
Nobody
part
can
two.
disagree with that, yeah.
Yeah.
Right.
I thought it was
Yeah.
awesome, yeah.
Well, does everyone know what the Regional Greenhouse Gas Initiative is?
Yes.
That's great. Also known as RGGI. I think the name is terrible. It should have been the Pollution Limitation Plan or something like that, but whatever. Most people don't know what that is, including our own legislators. We have a legislative political director. I won't tell them who they are. And they said, I don't know who RGGI is.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. Thank you guys. And so what Paige and I did, I'm not kidding you, we wrote a children's book, an 8-page children's book, and sent it out. And we've been told that that helped several people who are making votes that change our lives, that this why can't you do this all the time? So, yeah, it's just, and again, we just made this, we had like Glenn Wolfington, he was like a big bad wolf, and he
Yeah.
was wearing a red vest. And,
You gave them
And like
crayons.
his boys behind him.
what was that?
You gave them crayons.
It's a coloring
No, it's not a coloring book, unfortunately. That would have been good
That's
though.
actually really
Yeah, yeah. Anyway,
Do you have
good. Yes, please.
Where can I find this?
It's on our Instagram. It's on our website. The printer was broken. I was going to give a QR code for that, but we can.
It's just at EA Sierra Club on our Instagram.
Yeah. And I didn't brand this yet because of it still needs some polishing, but yeah. And then the last thing we'll talk.
Is it out on Instagram?
It's on our website. It's
Yeah,
on our website.
on our website, which is
Mhm.
just Virginia Sierra Club, and it should have that.
You can also, sorry, go ahead.
.org or I guess.
Yeah, no, here. You have your business card? I have your
Yeah.
business card. Here, all of the information's right there. And we'll leave these out for people who follow.
Yeah.
Okay, so, and the last thing is, and this isn't new. This is a tried and true thing. They do it for political candidates. They do it for advocacy think tanks. It's called a messaging triangle. And oftentimes they do have supported data stuff, but for the purpose of our exercise, we're just making these about frames. And that's one core message that everyone can understand in an easy way, and then 3 supporting arguments. The reason that is because behavioral science has shown that people can only absorb so much sometimes, and at some point, it's like, stop screaming at me, dude. You know, so just keep it in there, and you know, when you're asked questions about this, especially from the press, you keep it into these 3 things. Message triangle is very easy. Anyone can do it. Actually, I think anyone can do anything that I do. I'm not that impressive. I'm just gonna let you guys know, but I just happen to know a little bit more about this. That's okay. You got that on tape? Great. So we just have an example here again. We don't use climate change. We just say fossil fuel pollution. People generally have a bad association with fossil fuels, so that's already established. You know, robs us of our health, our financial well-being, and our shot at a livable future. The shot at a livable future, this is for internal audiences, we don't go into it, but like, again, the justice value, full stop. Everyone deserves access to clean air and clean water. You know, when you're drinking water that is filled with toxic chemicals, that shouldn't be the case. I mean, we're the richest country in the world, and that happens all over the place. Same thing with air. I've read a study recently that said 95% of all the air in America is at levels the EPA would consider pollution levels the EPA would consider too high. 95%. And the worst places and the people who are most impacted are actually children. It's about 3 million children every year are hospitalized because of air pollution. And that's because of the fossil fuel industry. That's just bottom line. Hero frame, you all get it. We don't have to go through all these ones again. But so yes. So are there any questions about this? Because now we're gonna flip the script and you're gonna teach us
Yeah.
what you think. But yeah, any questions? Yes.
Well, I just wanted to jump on what you just said, because this has bothered me for years. Like you said, climate change is like, it's so politically,
Yeah.
you know, it's like it turns a lot of people off the minute you say climate.
Right.
But pollution, and it is well known that it has a direct effect on children's health. And you can
Yes.
say, you gave a number, which is probably correct, right?
I assume.
So like,
Yeah.
like
Can you fact check?
it just seems, and the same policies, you know, would be better for climate change or pollution. I mean, they're like the same kinds of things generate pollution, and they have climate change, like
Yes.
automobiles and energy production, things like that. So why don't we just talk about pollution, which we can all agree on?
I will.
And just stop using that climate change message that doesn't work.
I'll give you the example that I always use. It's the projects that are destroying the planet are destroying people's lives and livelihoods right now. That's just the case, you know, and that's the idea. It's like if we can think about the future and the darkness and the apocalyptic ideas that comes to it, but the thing is, this pollution is destroying people's lives and livelihoods right now. And the majority of people who live there, by the way, are children, and the majority of them are children of color. They live near the most toxic sites, whether it's industrial pollution or if it's power plants, coal plants, natural gas plants, all of this. And so we get to benefit at the expense of other people so we can keep the lights on, but the solution, this is not predicated on possibility, it's a measure of political will. That's the purpose of this, is so that we can hold our leaders, the people who have the power to do something about it, accountable. But if we can do that, we have to make them look bad with good messaging that means that they're gonna look bad if they disagree with us. Yes, Delaware.
Like a hero if they agree.
Exactly. Yeah, here we go. All right.
And heroes.
Oh, well, you go first. I'm sorry, he raised his first, right?
I got 2 questions.
Well, you only get one. This is
They're
about
related.
fairness.
They're related.
Okay.
So all of these are words.
Yes.
And
I'm glad you picked up on that.
I love words. And
Great.
I think a lot of people love words.
Yeah.
But most people respond to visuals. So what I'm thinking about is how can we make these nice words
Mhm.
the overlay for more impressive visuals.
Right.
Like, you may be too young to remember the.
I'm 55.
You're not.
There's a classic.
I love when people start something with, you may be too young to remember, but anyway, sorry.
But this is a classic ad that
Yeah.
goes back to the river in Cleveland burning,
Yes.
right? And
Mhm.
it shows a picture of a Native American crying,
Right.
Right.
right?
Right.
Who wasn't even in the
Who wasn't Native American, right? I get you.
Yes, I
Um,
yeah.
Right, so there's that, and then there's the issue of who is a credible messenger to deliver this,
Right.
right? And for the people we need to reach, that might not be you.
Thank you for saying that, and
No,
I
I'm
understand.
just-
No,
Yeah.
I'm not being condescending. I understand your
says it all the
reservation.
time.
Yeah,
Yeah.
what?
We say it all the time, too.
I say I'm not necessarily the best spokesperson in every situation I'm, but it's like, we have to talk about racial justice. We cannot talk about this work without racial justice. And the thing is, I'm not the best spokesperson to talk about racial justice, but if I'm the only person to talk about racial justice, then I am the best spokesperson. And that's how we have to feel, especially as white advocates. Yes, exactly. And so we can't, and listen, I speak to all types of audiences all the time. The number one thing you gotta remember is not to condescend, and that's why we don't, yes, ma'am.
I kind of have an answer to that too. So I work at the Union of Concerned Scientists.
Good for
And
you.
so one of the things we try and do as coalition partners is we have scientists on staff, we have scientists in our network, and if you're having a lobby meeting, if you need if you think that target, whoever that target is, I'd say coalition partners can be so powerful. There's Physicians for Social Responsibility. If you need a doctor in that room, right? Leaning on our partners to make sure that we have really solid framing, because scientists, we might not be the best at making really good framing that is drives that powerful statement, but having somebody in the room who can then back it up with facts and relying on those coalition partners, I think can be a really powerful 1-2 punch that we should lean into.
Sure.
Yeah.
Yeah. Thank you, Yasmin. I really appreciate you being here. Because she's not even in Virginia, so. To your first point about the visuals, I'd love to get into that, and I could nerd out about it all as much as I want, but this is part 1.5, and that's part 3 of a larger communication strategy. Yeah, now, the people who are Sierra Club members are gonna get this whole thing in September and October, so it's my pitch to join. Yes, Sharon, sorry.
So my question's a little more specific. I love this strategy for dealing with regular people, because I think it really helps. What I'm wondering, and this is something that I just am always, hitting my head against the wall, is when we talk to some of the legislators, Democrats, who have really been listening to Dominion over the years.
Yeah.
It's hard to, if you just go and.
You mean the company that overcharged customers by $1.5 billion since 2017?
Well, you have to use some statistics, I think, at least when you're dealing with these people. I'd love to hear what you guys have to say about some of these people who've been listening to Dominion for so long, and they're just, I don't wanna say bought and sold, but.
So.
They are bought and sold.
They are.
Yeah.
Yeah, and when you try to, say that, then they'll say, to you, well,
That's
that's
not
not what Dominion says.
Exactly, I
And
cannot tell you
It's
how.
like, okay, so I'm the liar and they're the truth teller.
Yeah.
Why is this?
I do teach a quick curriculum on lobbying and the best effective stuff, and it incorporates a lot of the things you're saying. And again, I love your thinking about this, but lobbyists who are much smarter than I am are great people to be able to rebuff that in real time. Sometimes, I said we don't want to use our officials' talking points, except if it's already saturated the market. So I'll literally we produce side by side, we did this with the natural gas industry last year, where it's this is what they claim, but this is the truth. And sometimes you have to do that. That's where contrast framing also comes in, is this idea. But bottom line, to underscore your point, perception is reality, especially if you're a politician. And if you build enough base power to show them that their constituents are pissed off about their lack of action, are pissed off about their buddy-buddy relationship with Dominion, that's gonna get them more to move. I would say arguably more than a lobby meeting.
Or if you can show them that they can be the hero if they choose to
Exactly.
do the other thing, because.
That's exactly what I mean.
Well, right, but
Yeah.
politicians, the ego is, the school boards.
That's good.
But, but it's also, there's an ego behind that, right?
Right.
And they want to be the hero.
Exactly.
People don't go into this because, most of the time they go into it because they really
Yeah.
want to help, right?
Yeah.
And if you can show them that they can be the hero and help,
Yeah,
right?
I
Okay,
agree.
whatever.
No, not,
Wow, you're really too young to be that cynical.
I am, thank you for saying that. My brand is optimistic but pissed off.
I think that's.
And listen, we were hearing about education just a second ago. My experience in state advocacy was for an education one. I met people who have served on the education committee for several terms, and they did not know we had a teacher shortage. They did not know that our teachers were severely underpaid when it came to other things.
Yeah.
And Yeah, but, yeah, and that, okay, so I'm not trying to,
Right.
yeah, I'm not trying to be confrontational about it. What I'm just saying is, I'm reinforcing why this stuff is necessary for public perceptions. Whether it's one-on-one, whether it's talking to the press, whether it's not, whether it's just your community, your churches, your racquetball or pickleball, whatever, clubs. I clearly don't play sports. The tennis, but this is how you can have these conversations so that you drum up base building, is what I'm trying to think. Because if we're all on the same narrative that says shame on you for disagreeing with me, then then the people in power are going to act. And when they fail to act, it's up to all of us to hold them accountable. And sometimes that means trying to change their mind by showing how mad we are about something. Sometimes that means you do this or we're going to vote you out of office. And we have to be as obnoxious about the truth that our opponents are about falsehoods and missing context and flat out lies. We have to be. We are losing a messaging war, not at fault of the people who've been here before, not because I just came into the thing and I've said this is broken. It's because we're so out-resourced and so out-manned when it comes to the insider politics. But we don't have as much money as them, but we do have more people than them.
Yeah, but how do you get the people to
This is what I'm saying. Right here.
Yeah. I get I get the messaging, I get the facts and all that kind of stuff, but trying to get the people to turn out, to the city council members, to convince them to be the heroes,
Yeah.
that's where my struggle is.
Well, and I should say, you don't have to use all these frames for all of these things. I'm sorry, you've had your hand up for a while.
No, keep going.
Okay, no, we don't have to use all these. You use them for what it's necessary. This is not like this is your narrative has to include all of these things. These are different rhetorical tools, we call them, that essentially make people feel something. The first part to get somebody to do something is to make them feel something. And I'll give you an example. My fiance is an environmental consultant. She works to make sure affordable housing is built in a way that's environmentally friendly. I showed her that email I was talking about earlier, and she said, this makes me feel dumb, and I just don't want to look at it anymore. But that's true, and that's what I'm saying is that at some point, one of the reasons our messaging has to be very important, and why sometimes the smartest people aren't the most spokespeople, is because they come off as condescending, and that's when the right gets to say, look at those big words they're using with equity. That's just saying that we're elitists and we're the common man, even though they're the ones screwing over the common man more than anybody. And that's the thing. And they're good at it. And we're living through the consequences of how good they are. So we have to be better.
It's my messaging problem that means why people don't turn out to my events.
No. That's not what I'm saying.
I'm still struggling.
No.
with trying to figure out
I'm basing this off on climate. I'm not saying for you in particular. And this is not an organizing idea. This is an empowerment idea. This is an add-on to your stuff.
Okay.
I'm sure you're fantastic.
No.
Oh, well, don't say that. Establish legitimacy. Remember, establish legitimacy. Yes, I am. Hype it up. Paige is a great hype.
You're incredible, but I can't
Yeah.
get people to
And look,
follow me. is the
I understand,
problem.
and if you want to reach out with us later and there's something we can support to help, I'm sure you're doing great. Let us know. But like every situation is unique, and there's going to be some places where this is harder to get off the ground than other places. This is just meant to give you a little bit more of a leg up. I'm not saying this is going to be the solution. This is not a silver bullet, but this is one way to make us in this way much better. Yeah, a tool in the toolbox, exactly. You had your hand up.
Yeah, so do
Lindsay,
you guys,
yes.
do you all support local candidates? Because I was a previous candidate in 19 for House of Delegates, and I was endorsed. I'm now running for Board of Supervisors in Chesterfield. In my district is where Dominion is, like it's as the crow flies, less than a mile away from my house. And so
The new one or the one that's existing?
well, both, because they're trying to go through the permitting process for the peaker plant.
Yes, yeah.
But there's the coal fired with the unlined coal ash. I mean, like it's
Yeah.
a
I know.
hot mess.
For 80
And
years.
so, like the community is really frustrated, but like then Dominion just held a community event where they had all these pretty posters and all of these huge, there were more Dominion workers than there were like community members, right? To be able to counter.
Yeah.
And they weren't able to answer a lot of my questions.
Right.
Promising to get back to me and then they never have.
Right.
But so as I'm out knocking doors, which I'm out doing right now, the community is upset, but how can I best utilize not only this, but like the work that you guys are doing in Richmond to help mobilize folks?
Well, in terms of your first question about endorsements, we're not the political folks, and that's also our local group would be the Falls of James group. So just wanted to throw that out there. I'd be happy to connect you with the chair of that because they're the ones who do local candidates. We do state level. On the second thing, you know your district, right? I assume you're running for office. So I can't just give you unsolicited advice. If you give me some more context, I believe I could be helpful or supportive, but the thing is, we can't go in there, I just wanna give a shout out to all the candidates for a second.